Bob stoutly suspected his father was hiding something about their roots.
We always knew Dad had something in him.
But Bob's father died suddenly before it could ever be revealed. Searching for the truth, Bob makes a dramatic discovery.
It was a shock. It was a big shock.
Bob Stoutly's journey to uncover his father's secret past on Ancestors in the Attic. You got any secrets in your family tree? Were your ancestors sinners or saints? Were they royals or rogues? Let's dig up some dirt. Let's dig into your family history and discover the ancestors in your attic. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but sometimes it still doesn't tell the whole story. For Bob Stoutly of Milton, Ontario, this photograph of his father held a family secret, a secret his dad took to the grave. Now Bob is about to begin a search for something that's been hidden from him his entire life. The truth behind where his family comes from and why his father chose to never reveal it. For real estate agent Bob Stoutly, even Sundays start early. Bob has always loved working with people. It's something he got from his dad.
When I look at him, he loved to dress nice. He liked to socialize. You know, he had a lot of close friends. But he was away a lot. I always look forward to him coming home. I kind of held Dad up on a pedestal.
But for such an outgoing man, Bob's father, Earl, was always very secretive about one thing: his past. He refused to ever talk about his father, Edward. All Earl would reveal was that he was orphaned at the age of 16 and that his parents were European.
Dad didn't share a lot of his, or any of his past with us. I wasn't the only one. I mean, he didn't share stuff with my mother. My mother, as far as she was concerned, father had told her that his father was Scottish and his mother was French, with the connotation that she was Parisian French.
But Bob and his sister always wondered. Just looking at their father made them question whether he was telling them the truth.
We always knew Dad had something in him. We just didn't know where, because he'd never spoken about it.
Tragically, Earl died suddenly when Bob was just 11 years old, taking to his grave the answers to his mysterious past. All his life, Bob has wondered what his father was hiding. Now he's decided to find out. His only clue? The name of the man Earl would never talk about, Bob's grandfather, Edward.
To help Bob pick up his grandfather's trail, we're going to search Ontario's birth, marriage, and death records to see if we can find any trace of Edward Stoutly.
Well, there's something there. We got an Edward Stoutly. Estimated birth year seems right around 1875. Death date, 30th of March, 1929.
But as Bob and I dig deeper into Edward's death certificate, we make an unexpected discovery.
He died in Toronto.
He did die in Toronto, but the place of death in particular, 999 Queen Street West. Because today that's called the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. And for over 150 years, it's been a mental health facility.
Okay.
But what was Bob's grandfather doing in a mental institution? When he was sent here, 999 Queen Street West was called the Provincial Lunatic Asylum, surrounded by a moat to keep the inmates from escaping. To find out why his grandfather was committed, Bob and I gained permission to examine Edward's medical file, a record that's remained untouched for 80 years.
It says he was admitted on the 19th day of July, 1928. But what strikes me as really interesting here is that it wasn't a voluntary admission. It says he was admitted by warrant.
So would the warrant be a physician's warrant?
It says there was a warrant of commitment from Edward Stoutly, and he was committed from jail.
Wow.
Look at this. Look at this. It's describing him as having, without lawful excuse, neglected or refused to provide such necessaries for his wife Helen Stoutley and 6 children, being in destitute or necessitous circumstances. And for that reason, he was committed to jail.
Jeez.
Your grandfather appeared unable to provide for his family.
For the first time, Bob discovers what his father was hiding. He was not an orphan. Edward had deserted Bob's father, Earl, and the rest of the family years before being committed to the hospital. To uncover more about Edward, Bob begins with Kevin's clues and starts his own search through the Canadian census. And in 1901, he finds what he's looking for, but not what he expects. Edward had another family, a family he had abandoned in Nova Scotia. In the census, Bob discovers a wife named Rachel and 6 children.
Edward Stoutley had 2 lives, literally. Somewhere out there, there is a whole other side of what we know of the Stoutley family.
But the census reveals something even more dramatic. In the last column under racial origin, the Stoutleys are listed as African. Edward and his first family were black.
It was a shock. It was a big shock. I grew up, be the age I am now, thinking I was a Caucasian, white Caucasian, and that I had, Scottish and French roots. And now to know that I have an African heritage in my past makes you search your soul a little bit about who you are.
45 years after Earl Stoutley's death, Bob has uncovered the secret his father would never reveal, the reason Edward's name was never spoken.
I think my father grew up very angry at being abandoned at such a young age. I think he made a decision to enter into society as something other than a black man.
Thanks to the medical record, Bob knows some things about Edward that his father never did. Edward Stoutley was a World War I veteran. When he died, no one from the family claimed his body. He was buried by the military in a simple grave.
Edward may have battled mental illness all of his life. It's unfortunate that his children suffered because of things he was going through.
For Bob's father, that suffering led to a life of secrets. Now that Bob finally knows the truth, he's decided to search for the black roots he never knew he had, and the black family his grandfather abandoned. In our search for information on Bob's grandfather, Edward Stoutley, we made another discovery. He was born in the town of Sandy Cove, Nova Scotia. So after the break, Bob and I are headed for the Maritimes. Not long ago, Bob Stoutley uncovered a fairly dramatic family secret. His grandfather, Edward, was black. Not only that, but Edward had an entire other family, a black family that Bob knew nothing about. Now, following one of the only clues we have that Edward was born in Sandy Cove, Nova Scotia, Bob and I are headed east. The town of Sandy Cove lies along Nova Scotia's south shore. Bob and I are on our way there with Tim McDonald, a local genealogist who's been digging into Bob's past for months. For Tim, this research is personal. Like Bob, Tim is also an African Canadian.
For me, it's never been an issue. My family have always been upfront with, about it. It was never a secret for me. It was never kept from us.
Well, you're a black loyalist, right? Like,
Actually, my family came to the Shelburne area before the Loyalists came.
few realize that Nova Scotia is our own Deep South, the home of Canada's first black settlements. After the American War of Independence, thousands of freed slaves fled here. Most settled in a place called Birchtown, which is on our way to Sandy Cove. So what was Birchtown?
Birchtown was a black community of about 3,500 slaves that came up to Canada. And they stayed here for a few years.
So they came, 3,500 of them came up. That's a large community, right?
It is, yes. It was the largest black community outside of Africa.
In his search for Bob's grandfather, Edward, Tim made a fascinating discovery. One of Bob's ancestors, Isaac Stoutley, came through Birchtown.
It is different knowing that my heritage came a different route than what we thought. You know, we had visions of our grandparents or great-grandparents emigrating from England to find a better life in Canada, and it probably turns out that at some point in time our relatives were enslaved.
But the Stoutleys didn't stay in Birchtown. They eventually moved up the coast to Sandy Cove. It took months of searching, but Tim has managed to find something very special. The homestead where the Stoutleys settled.
This is Stoutley country.
Really?
This was Stoutley land. They've lived here for about 150 years. They lived on this property as well as the one across the street.
For the first time, the Stoutleys had a place to call their own. The soil was rocky and poor, but it was theirs. Generations lived here. This is where Bob's grandfather, Edward, was born.
I think with any of those first-time immigrants, regardless of color, I mean, they were the ones that did the grunt work. I mean, they were the ones that cut the lumber and built the roads and built the houses and really paid their dues as entry to Canada.
Today, all that's left is an empty house.
To be able to stand on the same ground that they had worked, lived, and died on. And it doesn't take much imagination to still hear their voices.
To see if he can discover more, Tim begins a search for Stoutley graves. But instead of finding Bob's ancestors, he uncovers a mystery. There isn't a single Stoutley buried in any cemetery on Nova Scotia's south shore. Digging deeper, Tim discovers why. The Stoutleys who stayed in Sandy Cove were decimated by tuberculosis and buried on their own land.
So, Bob, this is a grave site. Very well be one of your Stoutley relatives buried there.
You don't know who might be in here or when
No
they
idea.
died or...
No, they wouldn't have kept records of that, unfortunately. Chances are they may have had a wooden cross or something. Perhaps the name may have been on that, but that would have disappeared many, many years ago.
For Bob, it's the end of the line in Sandy Cove. But Tim has uncovered another lead: Edward's birth certificate and the names of Edward's parents.
Stephen Stoutley.
That's your
Great-grandfather. That's cool. And my grandmother was, her great-grandmother was Louisa Louisa Stoutley. And they were married in 1860.
But more importantly, Tim's discovered that Louisa grew up in Windsor, Nova Scotia, about 2 hours north of Sandy Cove. Bob and I are headed there to see if we can pick up Edward's trail. Waiting for us is an expert on Black history, John Grant. Hey John, how you doing?
Good.
After digging through more than 100 years of local records, searching for any mention of Edward's family, John made a rare find in an oral history.
Yeah, we We took a look at a number of different documents trying to find some record of your ancestors, and what we did find is a reference here.
Louisa was a tall, slight girl with very light skin and clear blue eyes, with a head of loose brown curls. She also married a sailor named Stoutsy. I've been called Stoutsy all my life.
Have you really?
Sure, Stouts. Yeah. Stoutsy. Very light skin, clear blue eyes, with a head of brown curls. That's cool.
Yeah. She sounds beautiful, huh?
Let's see her face.
Yeah. But the oral history holds another amazing reference. It mentions Bob's grandfather, Edward. As a boy, he was known as Ned.
Louisa grew ill. When she passed away, the daughters were taken to Boston by friends, and Ned Stoutley, who had been with his mother, seemed to have gone from the memory of present friends. So Ned just disappeared.
Yeah.
As it sounds like.
But Edward hadn't disappeared. He'd left to start his first family, the family Bob is searching for, the family Edward would abandon. The oral history also provided us with one last lead, the place where Edward and his parents lived, Panic Road, just outside of Windsor. Digging into the land registries, Bob and I find the current owner who gives us the clue we're searching for. A few generations back, a Stoutley married into the Willis family in Truro, so we check the phone book and start calling. Hi, is this Glenn Willis? Glenn, hey, my name is Jeff Douglas. I have a question for you. Was your great-grandfather Edward Stoutley born in Sandy Cove? He was. Well, Glenn, I have someone who would love to meet you. So, Bob has found his black family. When we come back, the two sides of the Stoutley clan meet for the first time. It's been an extraordinary journey for Bob, and it's almost over. After years of questions, he has finally found the family that his grandfather abandoned and his father hid. They've been separated by decades of anger and misunderstanding. But now the two sides of the Stoutley clan are about to see each other for the first time. After a lifetime of secrets, Bob is finally on his way to meet Glenn Willis and the black side of his family.
To look at someone else and understand that we're from the same grandfather and don't have much similarity really in some of the ways we've grown up for the last 40 or 50 years. I'm really excited about seeing him and just wondering if he's as excited about seeing me, because these kind of things can go either way after all these years. Glenn.
Bob.
How are you?
It's nice to see you.
Man.
My goodness. My people.
Absolutely. You're mine. You're mine.
100 years ago, Bob's grandfather abandoned his first family here in Truro. The Willises are Edward's descendants through his eldest daughter, Blanche, a daughter who never forgave her father for leaving.
This is Blanche, my grandmother. So that would be one of Edward's daughters.
Great.
So that's her when she was probably in her late 30s, early 40s. And that's with my grandmother sitting on the front.
She ruled the roost around here. She kept an eye on everything.
Yeah. She had long, white hair.
And she used to tie up in a bun.
Yeah, but she just stayed there. That was her throne, I guess, or her perch.
Yeah.
She was there, yeah.
Ruler of the neighborhood.
Yeah, the matriarch.
Yeah.
And as you're probably aware, too, she was pretty bitter about Edward's departure.
Yes, most. Yeah.
And I mean, she held that on until she passed away. And she didn't want her kids to have anything to do with that side of the family at all.
Yeah.
She's very adamant about that.
Both of Edward's families had their reasons for turning their backs on each other. Bob has not only brought them together again, he's returned with a very special gift, Edward's medical record, and the possibility that Edward did not abandon his families out of spite, but out of illness.
If you read through this, there's one report here that says he had a head injury in the First World War in France. Whether he was a schizophrenic or whether it was after effects, shell shock or whatever, doesn't, at the end of the day, doesn't really matter.
Exactly.
Because of things he was going through, he didn't know he had any family at all.
Glenn and his cousin Beverly have a gift for Bob as well. A photo of Edward Stoutley. For the first time, Bob gets to see his grandfather.
After all this time searching to finally see a picture of my grandfather is just amazing. I've always tried to picture what he would look like based on what my father looked like. And it's fairly similar.
Sadly, neither Blanche nor Earl realized what Edward was facing, and both responded to their father's desertion in the same way, by cutting off their past and with it, their own identity. After all the years of silence, it's Bob who's reclaimed that history for all of them.
Be able to put these two families together after 60 years, 70 years. It's a pretty tough story for us, but maybe it's not an uncommon story during those times.
It's handsome.
There. Kind of looks like you, doesn't it?
Well, sort of.
A little bit then.
Got that nose.
Come on in.
To celebrate the reuniting of the family, Glenn's brought together all of his relatives to meet Bob.
You know, a handshake and a warm embrace. I knew I was part of the family.
You get so much bigger than I am. I didn't get those genes from Granddad. What the hell's going on?
I think the one thing that I can share with my grandkids now is their heritage. I'll be a mixed race grandpa. And I think that's a good thing.
The amazing journey of Bob Stoutley. You know, not long after Bob's first trip to Truro, he was invited back. You see, every year the Willis family get together from all over Nova Scotia for a family reunion. And this year, there was a new addition to the festivities, Bob and his family. Well, that's it for our program. Thank you for watching. We'll see you.